Hey guys, and welcome to French 3 and 4 Module 3. We're still tracking together in Module 3 with the French 3 and 4 grammar before we part ways and have different lessons. All right, so let's get started. We're just continuing our review with all kinds of verbs and grammar. All right, so let's review ER, IR, RE verbs first. So you may remember from last year that there are three kinds of categories of regular verbs, ER, IR, and RE, and they have regular endings. All right, so let's do an ER verb first, aimer, to love. And we'll go ahead and conjugate that verb. J'aime, tu aimes, il, elle, on aime, nous aimons, vous aimez, ils, elles aiment. And you may remember from last year as well, the endings are E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT, as you can see here. Let's do an IR verb, finir, to finish. Je finis, tu finis, il, elle, on finit, nous finissons, vous finissez, ils, elles finissent. And as you remember again, the endings are IS, ISIT, ISSONS, ISSEZ, ISSENT. Let's do attendre, an RE verb. J'attends, tu attends, il, elle, on attend, nous attendons, vous attendez, ils, elles attendent. And those endings are SS nothing, ONS, EZ, ENT. All right, moving right along, let's do some irregular verbs. Now this is a big sheet of just conjugations, okay? Irregular verbs in the present tense. First, let's do prendre, to take, or to eat. Je prends, tu prends, il, elle, on prend, nous prenons, vous prenez, ils, elles prennent. Now this sheet is made, or we call this a regular verb conjugations because these don't follow the patterns that ER, RE, and IR verbs follow. So for these, you just need to memorize them. Let's do mettre, to put. Je mets, tu mets, il, elle, on met, nous mettons, vous mettez, ils, elles mettent. Pouvoir. Je peux, tu peux, il, elle, on peut, nous pouvons, vous pouvez, ils, elles peuvent. Boire, to drink. Je bois, tu bois, il, elle, on boit, nous buvons, vous buvez, ils, elles boivent. Devoir. And we say, backing up, we say, for pouvoir, we say to can, and for devoir, we say to must, because that's how they translate when they conjugate. Okay, you don't say, or you do say, I can, you can, he, she, one can, and I must, you must, he, she, one must. Okay, so let's do devoir, to must. Je dois, tu dois, il, elle, on doit, nous devons, vous devez, ils, elles doivent. Let's do voir, to see. Je vois, tu vois, il, elle, on voit, nous voyons, vous voyez, ils, elles voient. All right, so go ahead and copy these down in your lecture notes. It's a big page of conjugations. If you don't have these memorized thoroughly and completely, along with all of their spellings, go ahead and memorize those this week using your flashcards or whatever other means you'd like to use. Let's continue with the regular verbs. Vouloir, to want. Je veux, tu veux, il, elle, on veut, nous voulons, vous voulez, ils, elles veulent. Dormir, to sleep. Je dors, tu dors, il, elle, on dort, nous dormons, vous dormez, ils, elles dorment. Partir, to leave. Je pars, tu pars, il, elle, on part, nous partons, vous partez, ils, elles partent. Sortir, to go out. Je sors, tu sors, il, elle, on sort, nous sortons, vous sortez, ils, elles sortent. Savoir, to know, facts. Je sais, tu sais, il, elle, on sait, nous savons, vous savez, ils, elles savent. Connaître, to know people or places. Je connais, tu connais, il, elle, on connaît, nous connaissons, vous connaissez, ils, elles connaissent. And you may remember from last year that savoir and connaître both translate as know, as in I know, you know, we know, they know, okay? But savoir only refers to knowing facts, and connaître only refers to knowing people or places. Appeler and s'appeler. All right, this verb has a funny spelling change in the nous and vous form. All the rest of the forms have a double L, but nous and vous have a single L. Do you remember je m'appelle, like je m'appelle Catherine? This is the same verb, except with reflexive pronouns in front. Okay, so we're going to stick with this conjugation, and knowing this, you also know how to conjugate s'appeler. J'appelle, tu appelles, il, elle, on appelle, nous appelons, vous appelez, ils, elles appellent. Let's do se lever. All right, this is a reflexive verb, okay? This is the same kind of verb that you would use on the previous page with s'appeler. All right, do you see the reflexive pronouns highlighted in orange? Me, te, se, nous, vous, ce. These are must-haves for a reflexive verb. And the way that we know that it's a reflexive verb is in the infinitive. It's called se lever, not lever, okay? In French, instead of saying I get up, they say I get myself up, okay? Certain verbs just are reflexive in French. So here's how you conjugate them. Lever is just an ER verb, so it's going to have the endings E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. And it just conjugates out just like an ER verb. But you'll also add the reflexive pronouns. Je me lève, tu te lèves, il, elle, on se lève, nous nous levons, vous vous levez, il, elle se lève. Let's do the verb suivre. Suivre is a teensy bit confusing in the je form because it sounds like I am, and it's spelled the same way. Suivre means to follow or to take a class. Never, never, never in French do you prendre a class. You always suivre. Okay, let's conjugate this one. Je suis, tu suis, il, elle, on suit, nous suivons, vous suivez, ils, elles suivent. Courir, to run. Je cours, tu cours, il, elle, on court, nous courons, vous courez, il, elle court. All right, let's do two familiar tenses, le passé récent and le futur proche. Le passé récent means that you just did. Le futur proche means that you're going to do. Okay, and here are our formulas. For le passé récent, we have venir de plus the infinitive. For le futur proche, we have aller plus the infinitive. Now, the reason I put these side by side is because they kind of seem to go together, okay? They both use an infinitive, and they both use a supporting verb. One happens just a bit ago, and one is going to happen in just a moment, okay? So they're kind of twin verb tenses. So let's conjugate être, to be, in the passé récent. We put venir, and we conjugate it for each person, and then we put de, and then we put the infinitive, and our infinitive in this case is être. Je viens d'être, tu viens d'être, il, elle, on vient d'être. Nous venons d'être, vous venez d'être, ils, elles viennent d'être. And those mean I just was, you just were, he, she, one just was, we just were, y'all or you formal just were, they just were. Let's do le futur proche of être. Je vais être, tu vas être, il, elle, on va être, nous allons être, vous allez être, ils, elles vont être. And those mean I'm going to be, you're going to be, he, she, one is going to be, we're going to be, y'all or you formal is going to be, they are going to be. All right, so for the rest of them on this page, we're not going to conjugate out the full conjugation because it's pretty formulaic, and I think that you can get it. We're just going to do one example, okay? Just so you can have a familiar pinpoint. All right, so let's do aller, to go. Je viens d'aller, je vais aller. Venir. Je viens de venir, je vais venir. Faire. Je viens de faire, je vais faire. Avoir. Je viens d'avoir, je vais avoir. Aimer. Je viens d'aimer, je vais aimer. Finir. Je viens de finir, je vais finir. Attendre. Je viens d'attendre, je vais attendre. Okay, do you see how we have a simple pattern? Okay, so it's up to you to memorize the pattern and remember how these verbs look in these two conjugations. All right, let's do the passé composé, another tense. This tense tells us what we did. And this tense is always an action that started and stopped in the past, like I ate or I walked the dog, I brushed my teeth, okay? Actions that started and stopped in the past. All right, now do you see the other three columns on the left? We have the verb, the helping verb, and the past participle. Okay, so for être, it's going to use avoir, and our past participle is été. Okay, if you don't quite remember what that means, this might look familiar. Do you see how we've conjugated avoir? J'ai, tu as, il, elle, on a. Nous avons, vous avez, ils, elles ont. See that? And then we just put the past participle right after it. J'ai été, tu as été, il, elle, on a été. Nous avons été, vous avez été, ils, elles ont été. Okay? And those mean I was, you were, he, she, one was, we were, y'all, or you formal were, they were. Être is one of those funny ones where in English we can't really tell that the action started and stopped in the past. But in French, it's very, very obvious. If you say j'ai été française, it's implied that you started and stopped being française in the past, okay? Let's do aller. Aller's helping verb is être. And the past participle looks a little funny, okay? It has an optional E in parentheses for feminine subjects, and then S is only added for plural subjects. So on the left-hand column, we only have the optional E. Je suis allé, tu es allé, il, elle, on est allé. And in the right-hand column, we have nous sommes allés, vous êtes allés, ils, elles sont allés. And notice the S's for plural subjects. Venir. Venir's helping verb is être. Again, with all of our verbs that have a helping verb of être, we have optional E's and S's for plural. Okay, if you remember the Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp verbs from last year, we'll go over those again in a later module. But those are the verbs that are conjugated with être and have funny looking past participles. Okay? Alright, so let's do venir. Je suis venu, tu es venu, il, elle, on est venu. Nous sommes venus, vous êtes venus, ils, elles sont venus. Moving right along. Faire takes avoir, and the past participle is fait. J'ai fait, tu as fait, il, elle, on a fait. Nous avons fait, vous avez fait, ils, elles ont fait. Avoir takes avoir, and its past participle is eu. Now remember, this past participle doesn't sound exactly like this letter combination usually sounds. Usually we make oo and say like no duh on the inside of our mouth while holding oo. Okay? The past participle of avoir sounds more like an ou sound. Okay? J'ai eu, tu as eu, il, elle, on a eu. Nous avons eu, vous avez eu, ils, elles ont eu. Let's do aimer as our template for ER verbs. Okay, I put an E accent aigu there because ER verbs get an E accent aigu in their past participle. Okay? Aimer uses avoir. J'ai aimé, tu as aimé, il, elle, on a aimé. Oops, we forgot the A on il, elle, on a aimé. Just make sure and write that in. Nous avons aimé, vous avez aimé, ils, elles ont aimé. Finir is our template for IR verbs. For IR verbs, we have an I at the end. We just take off the R. And finir uses avoir. J'ai fini, tu as fini, il, elle, on a fini, nous avons fini, vous avez fini, ils, elles ont fini. Attendre is our template for RE verbs. For RE verbs, we take off the RE and put on a U. Attendre uses avoir. J'ai attendu, tu as attendu, il, elle, on a attendu, nous avons attendu, vous avez attendu, ils, elles ont attendu. Alright, so now that we've done the passé composé, let's do the imparfait. The imparfait is another past tense. Passé composé says what we did. Imparfait says what we were doing, okay? So the difference is that the imparfait is a continuous action in the past, okay? You didn't eat, you were eating. The imparfait is formed by taking the stem, and the stem is something that you have to memorize for each verb, and then adding the imperfect endings. Okay, so for être, our stem is et. And we are going to add the endings AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIE, and T. So we wind up with j'étais, tu étais, il, elle, on était, nous étions, vous étiez, ils, elles étaient. Let's do aller. The stem is al. J'allais, tu allais, il, elle, on allait, nous allions, vous alliez, ils, elles allaient. Let's do venir. The stem is ven. Je venais, tu venais, il, elle, on venait, nous venions, vous veniez, ils, elles venaient. Faire. The stem is fais. Je faisais, tu faisais, il, elle, on faisait, nous faisions, vous faisiez, il, elle faisait. Let's do avoir. The stem is av. J'avais, tu avais, il, elle, on avait, nous avions, vous aviez, ils, elles avaient. The stem for aimer is m. J'aimais, tu aimais, il, elle, on aimait, nous aimions, vous aimiez, ils, elles aimaient. The stem for finir is finis. Je finissais, tu finissais, il, elle, on finissait, nous finissions, vous finissiez, ils, elles finissaient. Attendre. The stem is attendre. J'attendais, tu attendais, il, elle, on attendait, nous attendions, vous attendiez, ils, elles attendaient. Alright, that is the end of this module. If you need to, back the video up, pause it, and copy and fill in the blanks.